So recently, I got to go to Ireland for a very unusual reason. You see, a friend of mine named Jasmine has a friend named Vita, who I've also worked with in theater and would consider a friend, that has two friends named Liz and Gordon, who recently bought themselves a castle. As in a couple of years ago, they went to Ireland and bought a ruined castle. This structure, called Sigginstown Castle, was built in a couple of different time periods. There's the tower, which is the oldest part, which was built somewhere between the 1400s up to like 1530. Then there's the Great House, which I believe I remember them saying was built in the late 1600s. And then there's the new structure, which Liz and Gordon built to have somewhere to live while they were renovating this ruined castle. And over the last few years, they have done a metric shit ton of work restoring this castle in as many times as possible historically accurate manners. They have beautiful, like, hand-carved wooden beams in the tower. They've got gorgeous plaster on the walls. The Great House is a little bit newer looking because they had to do some work to keep it upright, but they've done a great job. But I get involved because Vita was invited over to do the murals on the walls. Now, these murals are historically inspired. Vita took a lot of imagery from other murals on other walls from the time period, but also embroidery patterns, manuscripts. A lot of the stuff I was working on is from maps and marginalia, lots of different inspirations. And Vita did a lot of painting last year, but she was invited back this year to basically continue the job. And me and my friend Jasmine were invited along as little helpers. So, this is Jasmine. And this is Sigginstown Castle. I'm gonna go inside and I will do a quick walkthrough in this video of what the castle looked like when I got there. So this is the first of the stairs leading up, but first we need to go into the vault. This bottom room is called the vault, and they have it set up sort of in a pseudo-tavern-ish kind of thing. They've had a couple of, like, parties in here already. There's some, tankards on the table, the things you need. This other door over here is what they half-jokingly call the Hobbit Door. They're not entirely sure why this door exists. It opens up into what is basically seeming to be a storage room that is just a little space between the tower and the Great Hall, which would be fine if it was the only door, but there's a real-size door on the other side of the room, so we're not sure what it's for. But you can see the upper vault here, which the ceiling is really cool because that ceiling was created in the traditional manner of weaving a giant basket and plastering over the basket and then removing the basket. And that's actually how they have a date for some of the tower, because they found bits of wicker still in the basket and were able to pull it out and get it carbon dated. Now, this in here is the Great Hall. You can see that there's still a lot more work to be done. You can also see there's still beams holding up the walls because it turns out it needed some support to hold up a roof. Things to note in the upper vault, that little hole that I scanned by on the wall right there, not that side, that's the window, but go back to it. Right there, that is actually a hole into the oubliette, which I did not realize when I was first doing this tour what that was, that it was an oubliette, but yeah, we get to see the upper half from above, and yeah, no idea what else it could be. There is no logical reason for it to be there except for to drop people into, but because of the decay of the tower, luckily we can see into it from down here. I was not brave enough to climb in, though. But over here, we have a little guard room. There's actually, against that far wall, a hole that you can drop stuff on people at the gate. A nice little murder hole. It's lovely. There's also those little alcoves that they're not sure what they're putting in yet. Then we're in the lower hearth room. Now, this is the room that Vita did the most painting on last time she was here. You'll notice there's some murals up top. There's a lovely above the hearth piece. There is all this lovely red and gold lattice work on the wall. That is actually mostly a stencil, and Liz did a lot of putting the stencil in. Now, the stencil is just a flat stencil, so of course we had to add shadow and light to it, and a lot of that had been started, though not always correctly, and our last day was, or mine and Jasmine's last day, was spent putting in a lot of shadow lines. Then we get to go upstairs. Lovely spiral staircase. And I will say, we visited another tower later on in our visit that didn't have lovely railings like ours does. And oh my god, I am so glad that the railings were put in on the Sigginstown Tower. They were put in by a local blacksmith named... What was his name? It started with an F. Now, upstairs we have the upper hearth room, and this is the room that I spent most of my time in. This is the one that I did most of my work in. You can see there's always already a lovely stencil on the wall. Over here, we have the room that is the other oubliette room, and we cut to Jasmine showing me what it is, because I did not notice on my first tour through. And yes, that is a drop straight down 2 stories. How nice! Jasmine also shows me a lovely detail in the wall here, which she calls the taunting hole, and it's just a hole that goes through to the outer chamber, so if someone is locked in that little cell there on top of the oubliette, you can just sort of make fun of them and taunt them while they're in there. There's also already some lovely Shakespeare quotes in calligraphy along the wall from The Tempest. This is the mural that Vita had already started painting. It's got a lovely mermaid and a monster and a map, and this is the other garderobe. Now, sillily, I went in and saw that it was a garderobe and did not angle my camera down enough for you to see the actual toilet seat. You didn't miss much. It's a wooden bench, basically, with a hole in it. But yeah, that is a medieval potty. Which this tower is very unusual in that it has 2 garderobes for such a small tower. So 2 people could be pooping at the exact same time. But then we go up the stairs again, and oh my god, I regretted filming trying to go up the stairs, because I did not do that smoothly. And we finally get to the sky room. The sky room's the top room in the tower. The rooms are themed. The lower hearth is earth, the middle hearth is sea, and the upper room here is the sky room. These lovely banners are painted by Vita. The room is themed in an astrological way, and specifically the banners are of Liz, Gordon, and their kids' astrology signs, sort of just as a, hey, cool. But then we also find my favorite part. Yes, there is power, electricity, and lights throughout the entire tower. And I appreciate the fact they made an effort to hide it. Like, it wasn't just out in the open everywhere. And then we finally get to go upstairs to the very top. Now, this door is propped closed with a lovely piece of wood to prevent the crows from opening it and coming in, because it seems that was actually a serious problem. Crows do not belong in towers if you want them to remain in good condition. But finally, I get my very first view of the top of Sigginstown Tower. But first I have to readjust the camera in my hand. Yep. And there she is. Now, from up here, you can see a lot of just the general area. You can see into the tower room because they left those lovely glass windows. But that little corner that you're seeing there is Maud's yard. Maud was this wonderful older man who... He was just a hoot. He does a lot of art with found objects and trash reclaimed, basically. And the entire time we were there, he kept, like, Liz kept telling us, you've got to go see Maud's windmill. You really need to go see Maud's windmill. And I was picturing one of those, like, pressboard windmills that people have in their yards that are sort of like, you know, garden gnome quality. So I was like, okay. And then we went, and it was this steampunk quality masterpiece that he's been working on since he was like 19 years old. It's obscenely good quality, so beautifully well made. I'll drop a picture in here-ish. But this is around the corner here. There's another little, you know, drop hole in case you have people trying to invade your tower. You can drop things on them. And I look at, but somehow don't realize what it is, the very watchtower that you can go up to the very tip top. Instead, I just return to the door, and we nervously head back down the stairs, which wisely I decided not to film myself going down that staircase. But my projects, when I got there, the first thing I worked on was the border at the bottom of the water room. It had just been basically stenciled in when I got there, and I had to fill it in and give it more life. I had a lot of confusion the first couple of days because I wasn't sure exactly how much Vita wanted me to take, like, power over the room, or whether she wanted me to follow her sketches exactly. All of the sea monsters that I painted, Vita had sketched them out, except for a couple. But she took a lot of them from maps. And she even showed me some of the images so I could be, you know, familiar with the originals. But she's first sketched them on paper, and then you can sort of see there's some sketched on the wall as well, though it's in charcoal pencil, so it's not exceptionally, like, clear. But she did that through, like, shining a projector on it and then, like, sketching in. But that gave me a lot of freedom to mess with it. And some of the monsters, I will admit, turned out a little bit cartoonier, but in my defense, the original manuscript monsters are also rather cartoony. There's a wide variety of them. They all got names because I am that kind of person. I'm going to name my monsters. By the way, I did not start with the mermaid's tits just because they were tits. It was just, that was the bit of skin that was on eye level, and that was the first human-like skin I was working on, so I wanted to try it out before I went any further. But they look quite nice completed. I never actually named those mermaids, but I also never named the little bug-like creatures. But the one at the top, she got named Callie because both Jasmine and I decided she looked like a Northwest Pacific kind of Native American emblem, and so we named her California. But all of them got names. The two Fin Siren, who you see now, she got named Sheila after specifically the Sheelanigig, which is an Irish emblem / goddess thing that is always depicted as revealing her nether regions. And the old sirens, there is something rather showing off the girly bits about them. But because of that, we just named her Sheila, the full name Sheila the Siren. Liz actually came up with the name. I also really liked this rock that I was working on, which is why I specifically took a picture of it, though it looks better once everything is around it. Now, the snail right there is started by Jasmine, but finished by Vita because she was just working on finishing things. The fishermen there were also Vita's, as well as that little boat. Most of the boats that you'll see were done by a lovely woman named Rosemarie, who is local. And I was so glad she took on those boats because I did not want to try to do straight lines. And then I got to work on the shells, which were nothing but straight lines. But in the meantime, I had fun with lots and lots of monsters and fish. And you can see this last image is of the lattice work that we worked on, filling in the shadows of, which took forever, especially the bits that weren't quite right when we started.
Okay, so we are pretty close to done up here. There's Vita's mermaid and little monster and a lovely map. Then over here we have Flat Stanley. Then we have Coelacanth, Bessie, the sea serpent who I think we're calling Tacky at this point. We've got Chartreuse, Callie, and why does his name always blank on me? Clancy. Unnamed mermaids, unless Jasmine, do you have a name for them?
I haven't named them yet, no.
We have the sea bugs, which I don't think I'm gonna name beyond that. Then a ship. We have lovely Clarence, Lobster. Then we have the beautiful Jasmine. I did not paint her. Then we have Sheila, Eduardo, Francis, Sal, short for Salbert, Salmond Sallington III, I believe was his full name. Then there's Pip. And then I did not go through and name all the individual animals. This is Jasmine Snail. But I did the froggy and the hockey and the swanee. Did none of the boats, but I did the fish. Other fish. Those lovely fishermen are not mine, they're Vita's, but they
Angus
are...
and Michael.
No, it was Paul, I believe she went with.
Oh, was it Paul?
Angus and Paul, I believe it was. Then another swan, otter, heron, and another ship. And also, very importantly, shells and dolphins, shells and dolphins. Look at all the damn shells and dolphins. And that is a tour of the room. Okay, and finally the last ship is in. Which means the upstairs is pretty near done. The border, the lovely intricate shells and dolphins, and the beautiful scenes. So this is pretty close to done. There are still little bits on the wall that need filling in and highlighting, but most of this is done. If I can move fast enough, I might catch one of the painters. Jasmine did a lot of the vine work and the diapering, which is the little bits that fill in around the figures, and this vase, and
the
hedgehog and the snail. Let's get closer, you can actually see the hedgehog and the snail. And most of the rest of this is Vita and a lot of people who I may or may not have met. Yeah, Liz did the
bottom part.
Yeah, Liz did most of the
Red and gold.
red and gold, which is impressive.
So yeah, that's the majority of what I did for 2 weeks. We also did a lot of sightseeing because we were in Ireland. Of course we were going to do some sightseeing. But it was an amazing project to be involved in. And I'm so happy I was invited there to even just draw a single mark on the wall. So, if you're ever in Ireland, Sigginstown Castle does do tours. You can stop on by and see a wonderful historical building, as well as Liz, I know, and Liz and Gordon are trying to set up to do events there. Things like historical recreation of cooking on old hearth fires, of like historical butter making and random stuff like that. So if you're ever in Ireland, check out Sigginstown.